Hi, this is Richard, KF5RHI. One of the things that doesn't get a whole lot of play on YouTube and in the amateur radio community in general is care and feeding of your equipment. This is my homebrew inverted V antenna that I use in my backyard for all my HF work. It's been up in the air about 2 years. Today the weather's crap. It's raining outside and it's only going to get worse as the day goes on. So I decided, well, during a break in the weather, I decided to run out and get it, take it down. And I want to give the elements a once over and the feed line just to make sure there's no breaks in it, no real obvious sign of damage, and just doing a little maintenance that we might need to do on it, and then put it back up. This is the very first antenna that I ever built. I had a guy that I know online designed it for me, sent me the plans based on the dimensions of my backyard, which he was kind enough to pull up off of Google Earth, which kind of freaked me out. But anyway, the 450 ohm ladder line feeds my antenna back to a step-in post with a, depending on what feed line I'm using, either a 4-to-1 or a 2-to-1 balun. So far it doesn't look like there's any obvious damage, no dry rot, no breakage, nothing like that. So I'm just going to take it apart and then take the elements off and take the feed line off. Come on, this will come off. It looks like I got a little bit of spider web activity going on in here, but I don't see any critters, so we're going to go ahead and take this all apart. I took apart the ladder lock, stress relief, and feed point hardware, cleaned cobwebs out of it, checked all the nylon screws and wing nuts to be sure that there was no damage on that. I am going to put a little bit of Teflon lube on the metal hardware on the screws and the wing nuts that hold the antenna elements on. But other than that, this part turned out okay. This being my first ever experiment with home brewing my own antennas, I did make a mistake along the way. One of them being using solid wire, copper in this case, for my antenna elements. It is way too much of a pain in the and I won't do that again. I've learned my lesson on that. So we're going to check this out to be sure that there's no breaks in the antenna. So a little bit of kinks like this, that's okay, but the main thing we're looking for is any signs where the wire is broken. Just going to run my hand across it just to feel for anything that it might want to have further attention paid to. As you can see, it is a pain in the butt to try to handle. Let's just call that lesson learned. So far this one feels okay. I'm not feeling any breaks or anything that might warrant me having to splice it together and try to do some patchwork on it. So far this feels like it's okay. The coating, the PVC coating is still in pretty good shape. There's a couple of places where it looks like it might be trying to break apart a little bit, but it's still intact this time. I also want to check my connections. These connections here run from a height of 20 feet in my backyard down to my privacy fence on each side of my yard that I share with my neighbors. And I've got cup hooks in the fence pickets, and I just hook this loop onto it. It sounds like it's starting to rain again. I check these every now and then, and it looks like they're still in good shape. The solder's good, even though it may not be the prettiest. It still is doing what it needs to do. This element looks okay. Okay, here's the other element. We're going to do the same thing to this that we did with the first one. We're just going to run our hands along it, just see if we can find anything where it looks like we might need to show it some TLC. This being solid wire, ought to last a pretty good while. So I'm not really thinking I'm going to have to do a whole lot to it, but still it's good to tear it down every now and then just to check it, just to make sure everything's okay. You'll start noticing problems when you start getting squirrely activity on your signal. It just doesn't seem like it's getting out as much. You start having static or things of that nature. Then it's a good time to check out your antenna. What got me interested in mine was I started not being able to hear nets from around the state that I used to be able to hear pretty handily, and it just made me decide to tear it down and take a look-see. This too, everything looks like it's okay. I'm not too concerned with this. All these bends here, it doesn't really affect anything. So both the antenna elements are good. Now we're going to check the feed line, the ladder line, see if make sure there's no damage to it. On this episode of Lifestyles of the Poor and Amateur, we're going to look at the 450 ohm ladder line that I used to feed my inverted V. Just like the driven elements, we're looking for any kinds of damage. Any cracks in the coating or any places where we can see that the wires are broken. So far, this all looks pretty good, and it's been up in the air for about 2.5, 3 years now. So I'm kind of surprised. I actually expected there to be something. So let's hope we find something. This hasn't all just been a waste of both our times. Looks like it's okay. Everything's all right. Ooh, wait a minute. Right there. We've got a break. Right there in that line. So we're going to have to cut this off probably about right here and about right there, and then splice this back together. But I'm going to first go ahead and check the rest of the line to make sure that there's nothing else, no other place where it's damaged. That right there is like just a break in the plastic, but it's okay. It's not hurting the wiring. So far everything looks okay. I'm not seeing any more issues other than the one we've already found. Still, it's a good idea to periodically check everything out. Make sure that you're not going to have any issues further down the road. Okay, looks good. That's just a bend. Those are still good. All right, well, we're going to fix that one place, the break we had in the cable, and hopefully that'll take care of what's going on with this. Okay, we've got our one break in the wire isolated, so we're just going to cut these pieces off. I'm just anal about it, so I'm going to just cut it off right here at the end of this panel. Now we'll clean these areas up, and then we'll solder these two pieces back together. Okay, we've got the shielding cleaned off, and we've got the ends twisted together. I've even remembered to put shrink wrap on before soldering everything together. So now we've just got to give it a couple of love taps from the old solder gun. No poking fun at the way I solder, because it's not the prettiest job in the world. We shall let the gun melt the solder. Which ought to be happening. There we are. And I want to get everything good and coated on that one. Let it cool. Now let's move on to the other one. I want to make sure we get these good and soldered so we have a good electrical connection, because I don't want to have to tear these things all back down and do them again. A big glob of solder on the bottom. think that's going to be good. We'll just let that cool for a few minutes, and then I'll put the shrink wrap on it, heat it up, and we're good to go. I'm still after that going to also, just to be safe, to add a little more weatherproofing, put some liquid tape across this area, let it dry overnight, and then wrap it in electrical tape, hopefully giving it a good watertight connection so I don't get water in there and have to do this all over again in a couple of months.
Fire! 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 Fire!
Never can get it all done in one batch. I always have to do a second one. And sometimes a third. But I'd say today probably just need the one. I don't have a heat gun, so I have to do it the old-fashioned way with a lighter and or pretty much a lighter. Okay, let's put our old friend liquid tape on there. And again, I'm sure I'm about to get some criticism on the comments section, and that's okay, because if you can do it any better, I'll let you come and fix my antennas for me. Mainly want to get these ends here where the shrink wrap is to add just that little extra bit of waterproofing. Okay, we're going to let this dry overnight, and then when I come in the morning, I'll get up and we'll wrap a few wraps of electrical tape around here just as a precaution and just to make sure that everything stays nice and waterproofed. See you tomorrow. Okay, Sunday morning, and I've had my coffee, so I'm reasonably coherent, and we've got everything electrical taped up. Looks like everything is holding together nicely. Let's go ahead and take it to the backyard and run it back up, and we'll see how she works. Okay, we've got the antenna strung up. It goes from the top point right up there above my weather station down to the fence on that side and to the fence on that side. The feed line runs down to the ground, then along my fence over to the back porch area where I sit and operate when the weather permits. Well, antenna maintenance isn't one of those sexy things that everybody likes watching videos about, like unboxing a new radio or a new weapon, shooting at exploding targets and things like that. It's still something that needs to be done, because we all know that a good antenna can make up for a poor quality radio or a poor quality operator. So go out, check your antennas in your backyard, and make sure they're still working. It's better to find out now than when you need it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.